Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Around the Big Ten podcast. I'm Mark Givler. Got Chip Minnick with me here as always. We are still on our team capsules because there's a million teams in the Big Ten these days. So we're still rolling them out here over the next week. We should be pretty much wrapped up as spring ball is starting in certain parts of the country. And pretty much everyone will be starting here by around St. Patrick's Day, maybe one or two schools that start a little bit after that. But by the 17th of the month here, I think everyone will pretty much be out on the practice field. So good timing here. Next up for us is Washington. I know I've said this a few times, so I promise I'm not pandering here, but this is another interesting one to talk about because of the dynamics of the last 24 months from, nearly winning a national championship to losing their head coach to, replacing coaches, replacing coordinators, replacing players from the transfer portal. Had maybe their best NFL draft class ever, a year ago. So like all these things going on, all these changes in the program, they struggled last year, first year in the Big Ten with all the new changes. And so this is a program that's trying to regain its footing in a very, very competitive conference. Chip, let's start. I'm going to go out a little bit out of order here. Let's start with Jedd Fisch because this is year two. And this is a guy who had so much to deal with in year one. Like, yes, he's got to do all the NIL and transfer portal stuff that everyone else has to do, but he's also he's replacing coaches. He's replacing players. He's installing his system, his culture. It's just a very, very tough hand he was dealt year one. How does he make this his program? We always talk about players year one to year two. They like do their best improvements as a player. Can we say the same now about Jedd Fisch? You would think this is going to be an easier year for him than last year, given all the stuff he had to kind of untangle.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I think it definitely would be easier considering just the way everything unfolded. With Kalen DeBoer leaving after, the 2023 season in January. And obviously, it's one of these things where those players, the transfer portal is just part of, every program. Washington is not immune to that. But I think Jedd Fisch coming in and the players that decided to remain, the players that came in, getting acclimated to, and let's not ignore the fact that, it was a seismic move for Washington and the three other teams from the traditional West Coast moving into the Big Ten, even under the best of circumstances, let alone coming in the way that Jedd Fisch did. So I think everything points to the fact that this should be Jedd Fisch's program now, in comparison to last year, where, again, I think it was just kind of, not that January was the worst of times, but it was probably less than ideal for Jedd Fisch to kind of truly feel that this program was truly his.
I think that'll work both ways in terms of the players. I think now the players, obviously the ones who have been here now for both of Jedd Fisch's off seasons, are going to have a better idea of what to expect, a better grasp of what he wants to do. And I think that's going to just help everyone out as they try and, this was a program that was really trending in a amazing direction with DeBoer. And just, again, last year was tough, but, Jedd Fisch has a good reputation. He's a good football coach. And so the expectation has to be that he's going to, around that program has to be to get back to that type of level of where you're, competing for conference championships, you're competing for 10-win seasons and things like that to get you into the playoffs. So that I'm with you. It's a big question. But I think the collective of Jedd Fisch year two and players year two who know what to expect should make for a cleaner off season and a one that they can, maybe the development curve won't be so steep. That'll be something to watch, of course. Washington also going to have some transitions on defense this year. Steve Belichick leaves, obviously goes with his dad to North Carolina. Ryan Walters was fired as the head coach of Purdue. How does this look to you on paper? We didn't really get the Steve Belichick experience because he was coming in
right,
very similar to Fish. He's just trying to clean up the craziness, and then he's only there a year, and so I don't know that we ever got the full picture there. Ryan Walters comes in, was a pretty big name in coaching circles a couple of years ago before taking the Purdue job. Good reputation as a defensive guy. Purdue, that was a disaster. But now, is this a more comfortable situation for Walters? He can kind of get back to just kind of coaching and not being CEO. How do we view this transition?
I view it as just a blatant positive for Washington. Just to kind of add on to what we were just talking about with regard to Jedd Fisch, like making it his program. And this is not meant as a shot at Steve Belichick. I'm sure that that was not an uncomfortable situation for Jedd Fisch, but I do believe that when it comes to Ryan Walters, this is kind of my belief, is that Ryan Walters, it did not go well at Purdue in any way, shape, or form. However, when you take a step back and you think about the fact that Ryan Walters, as the defensive coordinator at Illinois, had the Illinois defense playing extremely well. Ryan Walters, his defensive backs, and that's his kind of his area of focus and expertise is within the secondary. Prior to being in Illinois, he was at Missouri, did a great job there. I think if I'm Jedd Fisch and I have the opportunity to bring in a guy who has a good reputation for developing a strong secondary play, and by the way, has a better familiarity with Big Ten personnel than Steve Belichick, and that's just my perspective on it, is that I believe that this is it helps not only Jedd Fisch to make this more his program, but on the Ryan Walters side of things, I mean, we joke about like how Nick Saban was always kind of like the rehabilitation stop for coaches. Not that I think Ryan Walters, that his reputation took a heavy hit, but I mean, the poor performance of Purdue certainly was not something that I'm sure that he is happy about. So this is an opportunity for him to kind of, maybe like you said, kind of be more on the area, or, as a defensive coordinator, to kind of focus in on what he truly enjoys. And then if an opportunity presents itself again to be a head coach, maybe he'll kind of look at it like, okay, these are some of the things that I've learned that I shouldn't do. But this opportunity at Washington has kind of helped rehabilitate that coaching image.
Yeah. I generally view this as a positive. You hit on some of the reasons. Again, I kind of repeat myself here, but a big reason for me, I don't know how to wrap my arms around Steve Belichick's time at Washington at this point.
Right.
What he actually is as a college defensive coordinator. I think Walters obviously is much more experienced in the college game, in coordinating a defense. I think you kind of know a little bit more what you're getting there. Mm-hmm. I've said this for years, and I think it's even more true today in the current climate of the portal and NIL. I think Purdue is the hardest job in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. I think it's even harder than Northwestern. And so how much do we take from his time at Purdue? Like, it was not good. It wasn't good at all, and it couldn't have been any fun for him. But that doesn't mean he can't reset a little bit and get back to being a really good defensive coordinator. So I generally would bet on that to happen. I think he'll have easily as much resources, if probably more resources, at Washington than he had even at a place like Illinois, for sure. So he's going to have some resources at his disposal to collect talent. And so I generally do view this as a positive. I just think Walters is a little bit more of a known quantity, and Belichick is still like jury's out, incomplete grade, like however you want to put it, as far as his ability to coordinate and effectively design and recruit a college defense. So should be, I think, a positive. We'll see. The other thing, they will be replacing starting quarterback Will Rogers. Solid stopgap. Not spectacular by any means last year. At times was very good. At times struggled. I think people saw the big numbers at Mississippi State and kind of thought, well, he'll just come in and pick right up. And it's like, well, no. I think those numbers were probably skewed a little bit by, especially early in his career, by the Mike Leach offense, and Michael Penix. I think the more we learn about Michael Penix, the more we appreciate just how good he was. So, maybe a bit disappointing there in terms of what they got out of Will Rogers, but ultimately probably a decent stopgap, which is what they needed. So now you're going to have a new starter. It certainly looks like that's going to be Damon Williams. And he really did a nice job, when he got into the games last year. So that's, I think, exciting. And Chip, a little different dynamic. Like Will Rogers, not a big runner. Michael Penix, not a big runner. This guy's electric.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it certainly points to being Damon Williams as the starter. He actually got to start the last couple games of the season for Washington. Now the reason why I put this down as a question is, that when it comes to like other quarterbacks on the roster, Shea Kuykendall is listed. They also have a couple true freshmen. So I look at it from the idea of, I reference the idea like the transfer portal. I mean, everybody knows that it's one of these things where it's like, unfortunately, it's always an active concern that any program has to be aware of. But I would say, yeah, like I think Damon Williams represents a departure from what Washington traditionally has done. And I realize I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but again, I think it goes back to what Jed Fish wants to do with his offense, with his program, and the fact that, he's not the biggest guy. He's only listed at like 5'11", 187. So by traditional Big Ten quarterback standards, no, he's not, maybe as, physically, imposing as other Big Ten quarterbacks. But what he may present in terms of, like you said, that dynamic capability, he might be just what the doctor ordered for that Washington offense. So it's going to be interesting to see if he does wind up emerging as the starter for the Huskies.
Yep, and certainly, again, they're gonna make him earn it in spring practice. So that's gonna be something to watch. Just can he's the lead horse right now? Can he hold on to that? Can he continue? Like the numbers, I know it's a small sample size, but the numbers were fantastic last year. I mean, you're talking about you're talking about 78% completion percentage, 944 yards, 9 yards a pop, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Now 21 sacks.
Yes. There you go.
That's got to come down.
That's the flip side, is that, again, sometimes it's like you have to take, all right, it's like you have to take the whole. You can't just isolate, what is tantalizing. It's like you have to recognize, all right, yeah, there are a lot of things that are exciting, but oh boy, there are some things that we need to clean up and improve. Kind of to your point, that all right, 21 sacks extrapolated over, a full season. That's a lot of hits, and that's more than likely going to wind up that he's going to wind up missing time, which is what the coaches have to figure out. Like, okay, what do we need to do, in terms of, all right, Mon, obviously, we want you to gain yards, but if you can slide or you can get out of bounds to avoid those necessary hits, and let alone, what can they do to improve the pass protection, along the offensive line? Those are all part of the overall picture for Washington's offense.
Yep. So that'll certainly be interesting to watch. Like I said, Damon Williams, if we were talking about like total wild cards in the Big Ten this year, doesn't Damon Williams have to be one of them, because you could see a scenario where it doesn't go well, where the sacks pile up and that the physical toll is taken on his body, which either gets him injured or in many cases has an effect on decision making and things like that. And this thing just doesn't really get off the ground the way we thought it might. But you could also see a scenario where he turns out to be one of the more, maybe almost like I know he's played last year, but almost like a newcomer of the year, like breakout player of the year type of thing in the Big Ten. So this has all sorts of possibilities.
And let's not forget, and I realize we're going to do like more of a schedule analysis later on. You talk about, like within the Big Ten, the very first Big Ten game for the Washington Huskies, the Ohio State Buckeyes traveling out there at the end of September. So you want to talk about a big test that, Washington, when they get through, and one of their non-conference games, let's not sugarcoat it. It's that, I realize with the, the way that the Pac-12 kind of broke apart, that, Washington State game, that's a tough one that they have to, they lost last year, but it's like one of those things where it's like, they want to make sure that they've got their quarterback upright and healthy, especially as they enter into Big Ten football play. But like I said a few moments ago, we're going to look at the Washington Huskies schedule in greater detail after spring ball.
But definitely, to your point though, definitely, they're going to have to hit the ground running. Like they're not gonna be able to really ease into this in September. They've got some big games early. So, it's going to be, again, this is a fascinating one to me. I feel like I have the pulse on my finger on the pulse of a lot of these teams in terms of like, okay, this is like a top 3 team in the league, it's a bottom 3 team in the league. This is a 500 team, whatever. Washington to me is kind of a wild card. I think you could talk yourself into another 5 or 6 win season. I think you could talk yourself into a lot more than that. I think you could talk yourself into a 9-win season. It just, they're a bit of a wild card for me. So we'll see how spring ball goes, what the reports are on Damon Williams, especially, but that offensive line that got kind of decimated when Kalen DeBoer left via the draft, via transfers. They got some guys coming in now. So repatch that. So we'll see how the reports of that are doing and how they're protecting Damon Williams in practice. But this is a good early spring look at the Washington Huskies. We'll come back to them after spring football for schedule analysis, recap maybe the questions we asked, if they were answered, where they kind of stand on that. And again, we're going to be doing this for every Big Ten team. So check us out at youtube.com/@SaturdayGlory. If you want to watch the other teams, go to the Around the Big Ten podcast playlist. You can watch them all on there. Or if you like to listen instead of watch, podcast platform of choice, Apple, Spotify, whatever you listen to, we'll be on there as well. So appreciate everyone watching and listening, and we will be right back here soon with another one.